3 people were killed in San Diego, at that mosque shooting. Like, I'm so sick and tired of the news. I see those victims not very different from us.
The word terrorist has to be reserved
for Muslims. Probably need to stop using the word Islamophobia, because Islamophobia implies fear of Muslims. Nobody can understand the extent of this trauma.
It makes me think that there's some kind of deep moral decay, some kind of deep loss of honor in our society.
Muslim hatred in this country is manufactured. And if it's manufactured, then there is a manufacturer. And if there is a manufacturer, then that manufacturer can be exposed.
There's no privacy rights in the United States anymore. And it all happened because society was told you need to fear Muslims. Immigrants are the ones that chose America, and those are the people you're going to attack.
Growth of influence will ultimately cause friction. 3 people were killed in San Diego, at that mosque shooting. Like, I'm so sick and tired of the news. These mass shootings just in America every single day. I think there's more than one mass shooting a day now in America. This one obviously hits home. It's in California. It's not too far from here. It's an attack on a mosque. I see those victims not very different from us. I see that mosque not very different from ours.
Yeah. I know you've been there. I've been there as well.
Multiple
times.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is obviously tragic. People are talking about it, but I think it makes us reflect on why is it the case that people feel the need to target Muslims and feel the need to attack a masjid, feel the need to attack a mosque.
The one thing that unhinged me the most, I don't know if you've been watching every video, every news that was released the last couple of days. They bring a rabbi on Fox News to make commentary about the shooting of a mosque. And then this rabbi is really just sitting there the whole time, and he's talking about how, I'll bet money that those 2 kids just had, severe mental health crisis. That's all he could say.
Yeah.
And for me, that's just literally trying to completely wash the entire event like it was nothing. So attacks on synagogues, they are usually part of some kind of a bigger plot, a bigger sinister plan, Muslim terrorists and stuff like that. It's never, Muslims can never have a mental health crisis and be lone wolves and struggle and then go postal, like they say, right, and attack someone or something. But everyone else is always entitled to that explanation. It just bothers me so much.
I think the framing is so interesting. Mental health, that's the phrase that's used in certain cases. I just wonder, who would do something like this without going through some kind of insane episode? You have to be crazy to do it.
In order to take a gun and go to a temple or a church or a mosque or and then kill people at
any place where there's innocence. So why is that the focus? Oh, it's got to be the mental health. And I think it's because it's really important to not call it terrorism. It's really important that this cannot be described as an act of terrorism, because the word terrorist has to be reserved
for Muslims.
Because that is what's working. That's getting people to vote a certain way. It's getting people to behave a certain way in society. And so we have to make sure that the terrorist label is reserved for Muslims when a Muslim does something bad. But if it's another group, or if it's an attack on Muslims, an attack that is designed to terrorize Muslims, it's an attack that is designed to...
Let's just call it something else.
Yeah, let's call it something else.
And so, I'm thinking that we probably need to stop using the word Islamophobia, because Islamophobia implies fear of Muslims.
Yeah.
But I think the more accurate characterization would be hatred of Islam or hatred of Muslims, right? Why is it anti-Semitism or anti-black racism, but when it comes to Muslims, it's Islamophobia? We're just scared of you guys because of the way you look like and your history and your background and stuff. Why can't we just call it what it is?
What would you say instead of Islamophobia?
I would just like say it's Muslim hatred.
Maybe it's anti-Semitism.
Maybe it's anti-Semitism, right?
Most Muslims are Semitic. We use Semitic languages.
That's absolutely true. That's
Yeah.
absolutely true. The thing is, though, like, I mean, I don't want to share a sob story here. I mean, as a Muslim, I think I've experienced Islamophobia or anti-Muslim hatred, whatever you want to call it, almost my entire adult life. My wife experienced it, my kids experienced it, people in the community experienced it. Like, nobody can understand the extent of this trauma when you're always keeping in mind Islamophobia and hatred and fear before you do anything.
Yeah.
Before you step outside the house, women before they put their hijabs on, or before you apply for a job, or after you fail the interview, yeah, well, I understand it's because I'm Muslim, and that just becomes the norm, or because you were fired, oh yeah, just because, yeah, I know that this happened because I'm Muslim, or I was attacked, or whatever. This happens to all Muslims in America. I shouldn't say all Muslims, but to a substantial number of Muslims in America. I don't want to talk about, our own experience with Islamophobia as Muslims. I think I'm more interested in solutions. I'm more interested in why this has been happening, how this can be stopped, and what does it mean for the future of this country. A country that prides itself, that it is, pluralistic, open for immigrants, open for everyone, freedom of religion, all the amendments to the Constitution. Yet we continue to fail the simplest test. And I'm not, again, Islamophobia is not the only problem, right? Anti-black racism, was a problem, continues to be a problem. Probably Jewish hatred and anti-Semitism is definitely real. I acknowledge that. During COVID, there was a lot of anti-Asian sentiment, right? Why, as a country, we just keep falling into this? What does that mean for our future?
You mentioned we want to solve, we should talk about solutions. We should talk about how this can be resolved and the world can be made a better place. But I think we have to actually pause and think about what it is that we're actually solving. And if we go back to the San Diego case, right, at the Islamic Center of San Diego, there's kids at the school. There's innocent, who's going to be there at that time of day? Elders who are retired, children who are going to school.
The weakest.
The weakest, right? The most vulnerable of the population. Mothers, stay-at-home moms who may be, going to the mosque for whatever activity. It's such a sign of dishonor that's the group that you would attack, right? That's the subset of the population that you fear or that you hate. That's the group that you're willing to attack. And, you were talking about how Muslims often
that's what happened in Christchurch, New Zealand.
Right.
They would not attack the masjid on a Friday, for example. They would find, another day of the week where there isn't that many people, but definitely enough to cause maximum damage.
Yeah, I just the point that I'm making here is that, so let me just give another example here. Between Muslim men and Muslim women experience Islamophobia far more frequently because
Correct.
they're more visibly Muslim.
Correct.
But I think the dishonor in the idea that I'm going to attack the women of a particular group, I'm going to attack the children of a particular group, it makes me think that there's some kind of deep moral decay, some kind of deep loss of honor in our society, that certain segments of that society would then be willing to respond in a certain way. And by the way, this whole thing happened, and there are people, Twitter, X, whatever the new name is, there are people on Twitter justifying this and saying that place was evil, and instead of saying this is a disgusting, horrible act, finding ways to say, they had it coming.
It's just, what do you do with these cancerous types? I have given up a long time ago on the notion that we can educate everyone and we can help everyone see the truth with good interfaith relations and good public relations campaigns and stuff like that. I don't think it's going to work with these types, for two reasons, by the way. One of them is that when you've gotten so rotten on the inside, that, like this creature, Loomer, she goes on social media. First post, she denies it, right? This is all just the Muslims kind of concocting it.
Yeah, it's a false flag or whatever.
It's all false. And then when she realizes that this is actually true, then she basically goes and says, this is a jihadi mosque. Like, what does that even mean? And that essentially they deserve it. And then she says, the best way to protect Muslims is to deport all of them, because send them to Muslim countries. This is the best way. If you're so corrupted and so rotten and so damaged on the inside, there is no process of education that can fix people like this. And I'm not interested in that fixing. But then I also acknowledge that for the longest time, I think we thought that Islamophobia and Muslim hatred in this country are actually real and genuine, like there is like actual substantial hate in the hearts of many, many people against Muslims. And that was always very disheartening to me. Like it crushed my soul. Did not prevent me from working as hard as possible, but it crushed my soul because it made me think like, oh my God, my neighbors, like, they don't know anything about me, yet they just genuinely hate me because I'm Muslim. And then I realized something in the last couple of years. We realized that the vast majority of Muslim hatred in this country is manufactured.
Yeah.
And if it's manufactured, then there is a manufacturer.
Yeah.
And if there is a manufacturer, then that manufacturer can be exposed,
right,
and therefore can be stopped.
Right.
And that honestly lifted a huge weight off my shoulders.
I think one of the funniest signs, with just the simple evidence, and it's anecdotal, but there's plenty of it. The funny sign of the manufacturing of this hatred is that, people usually think that it's probably at its height in like the South, right, in the southern states. But you'd meet somebody from Georgia, and you're interacting with them. So there's a Muslim interacting with a Christian from the deep South, and then they'll be like, "Ah, you're one of the good ones." Like they like you,
yes,
they appreciate
yes.
you.
Upon limited interaction.
Exactly. So most people, if they had interactions, if they had genuine conversation with each other, they'd be totally fine. But somewhere from the top, they're getting the signals. Hey, you need to fear these people. You need to hate these people. You need to make sure you do whatever you can because they're trying to take your livelihoods. They're trying to change your, everything about the world around you. All this fear tactic is coming from somewhere at the top. And I wanted to make a point. I think that it's a tool. It's a very useful tool. Whether we're going to use the word Islamophobia or not, maybe we should come up with a better term. But it's super useful. For example, over the last couple of decades, it was used to take away privacy rights from all Americans. The Patriot Act after September 11th, and then I think the amendments to FISA. I mean, all of this essentially made it so that the government can spy on any U.S. citizen, and even though they'll use language to say, "Oh no, this is about foreign surveillance," but any interaction that you have with any foreign entity, or even something that came from a foreign a VPN or something, a foreign, IP address,
right,
it becomes legible. It becomes something that they can actually look into and spy on.
Is that a Freudian slip, like VPN? Do you use VPN?
Maybe I
all
need
your
to.
browsing?
Maybe I need to. It's so funny that
I actually don't. I think I should, honestly.
You know how many of these channels and these shows, one of their main sponsors is always some kind of VPN.
Yes, VPN.
We need to find
company.
a VPN to sponsor our podcast. Yeah. No, the point is there's no privacy rights in the United States anymore. And it all happened because society was told you need to fear Muslims. You need to fear these terrorists. They're scary and they're everywhere and they're going to hurt you. So we need to crumble this liberty. I would say privacy is not just liberty. Privacy is the foundation upon which so many other liberties are built. And now that that's taken away, they can, any moment now, they can go, Judge Dredd on you and, start doing whatever they want because you committed this small crime here and that small crime there, right, this violation here.
Right. And it's funny because I think many Muslims, we've been very cautious in our reaction to Islamophobia because we've seen other communities and how they degraded themselves by, the false flags and by pushing back against any type of criticism that now we stepped into First Amendment rights. We stepped into the restriction of free speech. Now anti-Semitism is used by law in many, many cases to restrict a constitutionally enshrined right, which is free speech and free expression. So here I am, as a Muslim, I'm thinking we have to be very careful pushing back against Islamophobia, lest we espouse the restriction of other people's free speech, because free speech is such an important thing for me and an important thing for every American. And yet other groups brazenly, use Islamophobia in order to scare people from speaking in the first place.
Yeah.
And the other thing that is also extremely important in this context is that, for every action there's a reaction, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if you look at the last 2 years, which group or which country has been committing most acts of terrorism on the face of the planet?
I think it'd be the far right, the white nationalist types, on the planet.
Yes, on the planet.
I don't know which group.
Which country has been
which
committing
country?
the worst acts of terrorism on the planet?
The Zionist entity. has been committing
Absolutely.
The worst act of-
It's a Zionist entity that has been committing the most atrocities on the planet.
Yeah, obviously.
And then their actions are constantly being defended and kind of, washed and
And
diluted.
if you say something against it, you're anti-Semitic.
Exactly. But what was their reaction in America? Their reaction was in part, obviously, defending the Zionist entity and what they're doing and so forth. But the vast majority of their effort was directed towards what? Towards, a smear campaign against Muslims.
Yeah, absolutely.
Isn't that insane? Like, our activism, which is the action, was responded to by a reaction from Zionist entities and their, cohorts and elks in this country by attacking Muslims. What does that have to do with anything?
Yeah, so just to simplify this, so the Zionist entity commits a genocide,
Mm-hmm.
and the whole world sees the genocide.
Right.
And of course, that genocide happens to be against Muslims, and so Muslims around the world, including here in
And
the
the
West,
victims are Muslims.
right? And they're saying, "Look what they're doing to Muslims." But at the end of the day, look what they're doing, and the response is to say, "Oh no, we need to make the Muslims look as bad as," not to say we need to make this, look as legitimate as possible. We need to make the Muslims look as bad and as scary as possible. We need to ramp up the Islamophobia so that people in the middle will feel like, you know what, maybe it's okay that they're Muslims, so they're really dangerous. Let's be okay with getting rid
Yeah,
of
so
them.
the Zionists are dangerous. I think it's becoming very obvious now from all the videos and everything that we're witnessing. But hey, Muslims are dangerous too.
Yeah, maybe they're more dangerous, so we're better off having dangerous
Then it
Zionists.
makes it kind of okay that way. And maybe that was their strategy. I don't know how much this is working. We've seen now Muslim candidates running for office. Many are winning. Many have a pretty good chance. It's just, for me, like, we're history is just repeating itself. We're making that mistake again. And I don't want to go into, the platitudes of, oh, hey, if you allow this to happen to one minority community, it'll happen to the rest of us. But this has got to be very harmful for this country. And, I've heard this before. As an immigrant, I've heard this before. Hey, you should just be thankful that you live in America. If you don't like it, you can go back where you came from. I was like, dude, well, there is a reason why people immigrate to the United States, because they believe that this place is accommodating, this place is the rule of law, this place has constitutional rights, this place invites everyone so we can work all together. So why am I, as an immigrant, not allowed to be critical of actions that happen in this country that are antithetical to the very spirit of this country that attracted us to come here in the first place? Like, it doesn't make any sense. Of all people, it's actually the immigrants that have seen the alternative, have the best insight to share. And so every time we're critical of the system or the government or the policies of the laws or whatever, because we've seen what could happen when those rights are lost, we get attacked and ostracized. You're an immigrant. America opened its doors for you. And then you come here and you attack America.
You should just be grateful, kind of thing.
You should just be grateful.
I think this goes back to the whole notion of like the moral decay of this society, and that's really what we have to stop. We have to stop the moral unraveling of this society. Because I think a sign of a healthy society, this is how I would imagine it. A healthy society, a healthy, free, open society, right? That's what America and Americans believe America to be. Okay? So a healthy, free society should be willing to engage with any idea if there is a possibility that that idea will make society better. Oh, it's a conspiracy, guys. Right when I was on a roll.
Yes. You just.
No, I was just saying. It's like, I got this. It's good. Yeah. It'll be in the blooper reels. So what I was saying is a healthy society is supposed to be a society that's open to all, right? And open to all ideas and open to like engaging every idea. So if one group comes and says, hey, we believe these ideas make the world a better place and make this society that we're a part of good. And then there's another group that says, we disagree, we believe these ideas do. It's okay, right? It's supposed to be okay for them to just like have a healthy debate, a discussion. You know, there should be like votes on these things. There should be all kinds of processes by which the best ideas can be made a part of that society. And I agree that if there's any group that comes and says, we're not here to make this place better. We're here to like leech off of it. And there's actually some other place, some other, idea that we want to actually improve. And we're just going to use
at the expense of America.
At the expense of America, we're willing to do that.
Yeah.
First of all, I need to say that
i.e. the Zionist
that
entity.
sounds like Zionism. Right? That sounds like one of the most significant poisons that this society is suffering from. But isn't it okay if there's an atheist and he thinks that the best way to make this society better is that there should be more atheists? And then there's a Christian who disagrees. And he says, no, I think the best way to make society better is that there should be more Christians in this society. And then there's a Muslim, and he says, no, I think the best way to make this society better is if more people followed Islam. Isn't it fair for them to just debate and discuss, and whatever ideas that each group offers is brought to the fore?
Yeah, I mean, so Islamophobia seems to be generated here, in this particular context, by two factors or two processes. One of them is, Muslims are coming into America. And by the way, that is in and of itself is probably not an accurate statement, because not all Muslims are immigrant. There are Muslims that have been here for generations. I think Islam in America is as old as the Republic.
I'm pretty sure the majority
40% of the slaves that came from Africa were actually Muslim, right? But we don't like to talk about that because the slave owners forced them to abandon their faith, and the language over the centuries, and so. The modern assumption, though, is that it's just waves of Muslim immigration coming into America, and Muslims are now doing two things, and this is very bad, and that's kind of like used as an excuse for Islamophobia, right? Number one, you're being critical when America does not stand up for its own ideals, when America fails to observe its own ideals. When the rule of law is not observed, when privacy laws are not observed, when free speech is not observed, when
religious liberties are not protected.
The religious liberties are not protected. When mosques are attacked, when Muslims travel overseas, and the right to travel, with pride with your American passport all over the world, but when you come to America, you get harassed, at your port of entry. When Muslims criticize America failing to live up to its own ideals, then how dare you? That becomes a reason, for them to attack you, and Islamophobia, right? But I think added to this is the other factor, which is Muslims, like any other group, they have their own values, and they have their own morals, and they have their own good ideas and sometimes bad ideas. When they engage the general public, and they try to share those ideas with the general public in a democracy where people are free and have the liberty to adopt or not adopt any type of ideal, they get attacked. Oh, you're here to proselytize. You're here to change the fabric of America. You're not here as a citizen. You're trying to change us. Well, if you're so weak and malleable, it's your fault, not my fault. If I present something on the table and I say, well, guys, gambling has been bad for the economy. This has been bad for families. It's been bad for the country. It's been bad for everyone. It's not bad for Edelson.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It's not bad for these mughals that corrupt our political life. Why do we get attacked? Because when people go on social media and they say something like, Muslims don't share American values. Sure. If what you mean by American values is
Gambling.
Gambling,
Alcohol.
is alcoholism, is drugs, is self-centeredness, is greed, is stinginess, is abandoning your parents at their old age,
Or abandoning your children.
or abandoning your children, kicking them out of the house so that they stand on their own. If it means infidelity and cheating, if it means interest and accumulating your wealth using usury, yeah, sure, we don't share in those values. But why can we not be allowed, like any other group in America, to partake in public conversations and dialogue and share those ideas and present them and let people decide for themselves which one is more democratic?
Yeah. Yeah, they'll say, oh, you have some ideas? Hold on, wait, are you Muslim? No. Okay, we can't hear from you, right? Which is really sad because imagine how many things, so many different subsets of the population from different religious groups, how many things they would agree upon, how many ideas they'd hear from each other and say, that's a really good idea. Imagine how many opportunities there are for faithful Muslims and for faithful Christians to say, you know what, hey, we both agree, the economy sucks. This is miserable. Let's do something different. Let's change up something. Or, you know what, the way that the military is, operating around the world, this is catastrophic. And actually, it's so funny. That's exactly what you are seeing now. You're seeing figures like Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, some of these like big names on the right, Megyn Kelly, they're all starting to say, you know what, we don't really like the way that U.S. foreign policy is conducted. And Muslims have been saying the same thing for so long.
Right.
All of a sudden there's an opportunity for a genuine alliance on this notion to say, hey, we really should not be running around the world messing all these other places up and acting like we're some kind of police force on behalf of the Zionist entity. And that's when the Islamophobia rhetoric has to be ramped up by whoever stands to lose if this idea starts to get traction.
And they've been admitting or confessing, whatever you want to call it, those commentators that you just mentioned, they've been admitting that we've been victimized by the Islamophobia machine.
Yeah.
That is well-funded, well-oiled, and well-directed.
I think Carlson and Owens both openly admitted on their shows that they have been affected, and now they feel bad about how much Islamophobia they were fed and how they just bought.
And Candace Owens said the same thing about Palestinians. We were led to hate the Palestinian people, and the more we learn, the more we study, the more we look at the unfiltered videos, we're realizing really who the aggressor is here.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to the manufacturing process of Islamophobia.
Right.
What I said earlier is that so Islamophobia is manufactured, and there's a manufacturer, and the manufacturer can be exposed. It's not a conspiracy theory.
I was going to say, it sounds like conspiracy theory.
It's because I think there's all these think tanks. I mean, the Guardian, has written about this, and other outlets, that there is actually now plethora of evidence that much of the money that stands behind whatever the Clarion Project or all of those entities that are designed and exist for one purpose, which is to attack Muslims, much of that money is coming from pro-Israel lobbies and pro-Israel groups and pro-Israel think tanks and potentially AIPAC, potentially the Zionist entity itself. I mean, they've been doing the money game very effectively. And sometimes we watch with horror. I mean, the Thomas Massey seat was literally stolen, in Kentucky just because they were able to throw money at it.
$34 million they spent on this race.
It's unprecedented.
He said himself
in human history, not just U.S. history.
They bought the seat.
Yes, they did. And so if they've been doing this, and this is just one seat, and they were willing to spend $35 million on that, then why not fund projects and entities and organizations that will continue to demonize and villainize Muslims?
I know you're making a point here, but just to add in that like Islamophobia flavor, I think you said this earlier, right? That one of the things they mentioned is, his funding and his support is coming from quote unquote Islamic activists.
Him of that, it would have actually been a good thing and a nice thing to be proud of if Muslims have been funding political campaigns. That would have been a sign of political maturity. They're definitely not there yet. And there's a whole bunch of things to say, by the way, about how some actions of the Muslim community may precipitate or worsen the problem of Islamophobia.
Yeah, we need to get to that.
This definitely was not one of them.
We need to get to that too. But you were saying the manufacturing, so maybe we should go back to that. So how is it exactly that it's not only manufactured, but where is it being manufactured from?
I mean, if you have to always demonize the Muslims in order to cover up your own crimes, then it's a cause that is worthwhile for you.
Yeah.
And I keep attacking Muslims. I keep funding entities that keep attacking Muslims. America keeps giving me money.
Mm-hmm.
It's an incredible investment. You know, you spent $35 million to unseat Thomas Massey. You spend, $15 million on the Clarion Project, whatever it is. What I get in return is hundreds of millions, is billions of dollars.
Yeah, yeah, and weapons and all kinds of other funding. One point that I do want to mention, though, this is because we don't want to. I don't think we should sound like we're saying that the rest of American public and American politicians are just puppets. I think that's also it's going too easy on them. To say, for example, that somebody is they were paid by some kind of lobby in order to support the Zionist entity.
That
I
would
think
not be accurate either.
It's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
I think actually there is a very strong willingness to buy this narrative, like a joy in this narrative. I remember I think it was a tweet by Ted Cruz where he was attacking Carlson for being a Sharia lover. Right? I think there's also this kind of sickness amongst many politicians, many people who are in power, many people who are running some of the biggest corporations in the world, who also want this narrative to be seen as true, if not want it to be true. So we can't just say, hey, they're not to blame. It's poor them. They just got tricked. I think that's unfair.
No. It certainly is. And you can't really just say every Islamophobe in this country is a Zionist operative who's getting paid. Yeah, that's probably not true. There's people that are just genuinely hateful. There are people that are completely misinformed. 9/11 and ISIS and all of that have contributed severely to shaping the modern American mind, the modern Western mind, and their views about Islam and Muslims. But also, we have to admit, some actions committed by Muslims themselves. And I'm not even talking about terrorism, right? I'm talking about there are things that the American Muslim community does that just don't help.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to offend a whole other group of people when you say that. But I mean, I think it has to be
It's
addressed.
true. It needs to be stated, and I think we have to be honest, when we assess those things in order to reach some solutions, because we're not sitting here to complain. I think the point here is to diagnose the problem and then prescribe medicine.
Yeah.
And you can't do that unless you understand what is really, really at play here.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we've seen, all the type of insulation, the type of seclusion that many people in the Muslim community would rather have. Mm-hmm. They prefer. I remember vividly, I was giving a talk in the Bay Area, a few years ago, and I was talking about engagement. Literally, that was the point of my talk. Interfaith engagement, political engagement, social engagement, cultural engagement, and then a gentleman from the audience stands up and he says to me, why are you talking about engagement and you're pushing people to get out of the safe walls of their mosques and their community and their families? Why can't we just be like the Amish and have our own enclaves and isolate ourselves further from society? And I was like, dude, we're not isolating ourselves. We're not opening ourselves enough to society, and the Muslim community still struggles with tremendous Islamophobia. Imagine what would happen if you are in an enclave somewhere. And so this has been the trend.
Yeah, why? Why would that be the thought process? Oh, we need to hide as much as possible.
I think it's fear, it's protectiveness. You have your own values, you have your own worldview, your kids, and you don't want a wider society to corrupt those ideals. Especially many immigrants, I think they want to protect the language, they want to protect the culture, they want to protect the back home mentality, and so they just go into their cocoons.
Sounds to me like the desire to protect the language, the desire to protect the culture, and the cuisine comes at the expense of the opportunity to share the faith and share the ideas. and contribute. Right? That
Further
sounds
complicating Islamophobia, and quite honestly, like, I think Muslim culture has so much to offer. I mean, now
of
you
course.
see one good example, which is the Yemeni coffee trend
Yeah.
that everyone seems to be enjoying so much in this country. Imagine how many other examples of things that can be shared. I'm not, and I have to, share a little disclaimer here that I'm not particularly excited about
Yemeni
the
coffee.
the monetizing,
Right.
of Muslim cultural components. I think this is something that can impact society without making it look like we're financially profiting
Yeah.
from it. But I still find that to be healthy, and there's so much more that can be shared. So why are we holding, keeping all this to ourselves?
I just have to say, like, isn't all coffee Yemeni? Isn't coffee?
I suppose the origins wise,
Yeah,
yeah, it all comes from Yemen. So, thank you, America.
yeah. I guess that the reason I'm bringing this up is because the approach that seems to be taken by some Muslim communities and honestly some Muslim activists, leaders in the community is to follow the model that's designed by, let's say, the Jewish community and the success that they've had within, wider American society, or the activism that we've seen from the African American community. It's built on the same model, and I understand that not everyone will
Which is what?
appreciate. Which is, I think it's like this idea that we are a victim and we need to fight back against those who victimized us. But also, I think there's a very heavy dose of this notion that we are an ethnic group and we need to protect our ethnic group and all of the aspects of our ethnicity. And we need to promote our ethnicity, and we need other people to love our ethnicity. I think the problem is, I think this hasn't worked for the Muslim minority in the West, primarily because by definition, they're not an ethnic minority. By definition, there are ethnic minorities within the Muslim community, but if you're just trying to protect the ethnicity, you're going to end up protecting like some national background, perhaps. And again, you're not actually promoting the ideas of the faith. You're not sharing the religion, and you're not doing enough to make people less scared of Islam and be Islamophobic. You're not contributing. You're just trying to be Amish.
And if you are always defensive and scared with your neighbors, I think ultimately you will be sharing with them baklava and biryani a lot less,
Yeah.
because they pose a threat to you. And so what you're saying is that, sometimes we kind of like overstate the victimhood.
Yeah.
Anything, any type of criticism, any type of negative feedback, many of us are so quick to say, "Oh, this is Islamophobic.
Yeah,
You can't
exactly.
do that," right?
Exactly.
Which is, again,
It's not helpful.
It's not helpful, and that's this overreaction, I think, is what we've seen from other minority communities, and it doesn't work. And it really just widens the gap, between people. And that's why I stated earlier that we have to be very careful. I've always thought that we have to be very careful not to overreact with Islamophobia, because we need to realize that protecting, the First Amendment and free speech is really important, extremely important for us and extremely important for everyone else.
Yeah. And we, as a subcategory within this wider society, we love the idea of free speech because it gives us the opportunity to share our best ideas and to share what we think would be great solutions to the problems that we see around. And it gives other groups the opportunity to engage and say, that's a great idea. But if there's somebody in the background somewhere that sees that happening and says, oh, Sharia law, creeping Sharia, they're trying to replace the Constitution with the Quran. That's the thing. Like, then everybody automatically jumps to their own side. I think we have to resist the temptation to quickly jump to our own side and say, okay, fine, you know what? You guys go there and protect yourselves, and we're going to come here and protect ourselves. Let's not talk anymore because you're scared of us and we're scared of you. Right? And honestly, the shootings like what happened a couple days ago in San Diego, all it does is it increases the likelihood that people just fear each other, and we really should resist that.
Absolutely. Let me go back to actions in the Muslim community that may compound Islamophobia. Do you think that sometimes we have a communications gap?
Like an accent?
Well, perhaps, to a certain degree, accent is not always a bad thing, by the way, and I
No, I
agree.
agree. Actually,
I want, immigrants in this country to realize that as long as you speak, coherent English and we understand what you're saying, I don't really care if you have a bit of an accent. Some accents are more sophisticated than others, right?
no, I'm saying maybe we should have like a southern accent. When we talk, we should talk like this, and we'll have less of
I
a
don't know if,
communication problem.
a fresh immigrant from Iraq or Pakistan is going to be able to speak like this. But the point is, it could be an accent.
Yeah.
Certainly, that's a part of it. Some people in this country will completely dismiss you 100%. Once you speak with an accent. But also, I think everyone has an accent, right? So I don't know how much of an issue that is. I'm talking about a communications gap in the sense that if you don't understand the culture, if you've not watched the movies, if you know nothing about The Simpsons, if you've never taken a civics class, if you don't understand the Constitution, if you don't understand economics, if you don't understand football, and if you don't understand basketball, if you don't understand the culinary scene, you're not able to have relevant conversations with your neighbors. And a lot of Muslims, especially immigrants, I think they're entirely focused on turmoils and challenges in the old country. And so
Right.
they have no time or energy to engage. And when they engage, they only engage through that lens. And so they get dismissed in the process
Yeah.
because they continue to stay in this foreigner's bubble forever.
Yeah. I think that's probably true. I don't know if like is the answer like, okay, you have to go watch every movie and like learn every top song from every year in the past 30 years. Probably
Every
not, right?
single Taylor Swift
Yeah.
song, good or bad, and every boyfriend she dumped
Oh
her.
my God. Yeah. Right. That's probably not like the most important thing.
Some of that, though. Some of that, even remember, their sons and daughters, go to public school and go to college,
No, they're hearing all this stuff.
and they're doing all this stuff and they're experiencing all this stuff. That's what they're living every single day. And so, how far removed as a parent do you really want to be?
No, you should not be, and I think that's a especially if you're already stuck and that's the only option you have is like put them out there in public school environments where I think every group, it's not about like Muslims or a religious group, every group feels like this is a really miserable place, and the kids feel like it's a miserable place.
Right.
So yeah, you do at least you're obliged. You have to know
I asked
quite a
some
bit.
parents before if they watched The Lord of the Rings, and they said no.
That's a different problem. That's a
They
completely different
literally
problem.
said no. I said, get out of my masjid.
Yeah, I think that's worthy of being kicked out. That could be the line. If you've watched Lord of the Rings, you're welcome to America. But if not,
I don't know if everyone would agree with that.
yeah.
The other thing, by the way, that the Muslim community is so good at is its transactional activism. I think we want everyone to come attend our events and our protests and our demonstration when it's about Gaza or Iraq or Afghanistan, but we never attend any event with the Asian community, with the Black community, with other communities. We're just not present, and so that is often seen as, oh, you're only here when you need something kind
Yeah.
of thing. That's not healthy either.
No, absolutely not. And by the way, I think it's a violation of our own principles. Like we should be, it should not be about a particular group or a particular country that's in trouble or whatever. It should be about the principle of justice, the principle of of fairness. It should be about fighting oppression and tyranny. Whoever is suffering, we should automatically be ready to stand on the side of those who are suffering and against those who are committing the oppression, regardless, right? So that should be our principle, and that would be an easy way for us to say, okay, this is how I'm supposed to engage with the actual problem. If the problem I have is tyranny, I can't only have it when it's committed against me. I have to have it when it's committed against anybody, right? And again, that's the value that Islam teaches if we're willing to actually like follow it.
Yeah, and that's the type of education that has to happen within the Muslim community itself. It's easy to make Islamophobia into just an external problem that is happening to us, and dismiss the fact that there are things that we can also change and correct, as a Muslim community.
By the way,
Yeah.
because before we move on, there's a point that you made that I wanted to actually highlight because one of the things that I think people get accused of So they're an immigrant family, maybe they're first generation or second generation, and they still have family in some other part of the world, right? And so they work hard here, they contribute to society, they pay taxes, they make a difference in their workplace, they're well loved in their neighborhood, etc. This is like the typical, let's say, typical Muslim family, and then they send some money back home, right? Because they have family back home, and I don't know if back home is the right phrase, but back to that other part of the world where they have loved ones and relatives, and they want to do something to support. And somebody will look at that, maybe somebody, let's say someone who's been here for generations, right? And they'll say, oh, see, you're not loyal to America because you're sending money overseas to support somebody else who lives in a different part of the world. I think this is the stupidest argument on planet Earth.
But of course, if your son volunteers for the Israeli military, that's
so
perfectly
exactly
okay,
so,
right?
so your son can go and fight in the military of a foreign entity.
And swear loyalty to a foreign country.
Exactly. Furthermore, when you go on vacation to the Maldives, when you go on vacation to Switzerland or whatever, like you're spending money in a foreign country
And
too.
supporting their local
And
economy.
probably you spent more money, right? So it's just a silly thing. People get this, like they grab onto these arguments in order to attack, in order to promote these Islamophobic ideas. In reality, the world is not a closed off place. We're all interconnected. When you buy from the Dollar Tree, you're basically supporting the Chinese economy or the Vietnamese economy or whatever, right? But people don't really think clearly about these things, and they just look for an opportunity to attack. I don't think anybody should feel bad that they vacation somewhere else or they have family in some other part of the world and they wanted to help them out because they're suffering with lack of resources.
Right. When in the face of Islamophobia, though, I'm noticing that many Muslims, they actually prefer to hide, and they prefer to run into the burrows and the holes and hide under the sofa like a cat in order to protect themselves and their families from Islamophobia. So sometimes isolation and seclusion happen as a result of Islamophobia, as much as they might lead to Islamophobia, right?
And how are you going to blame a father for like telling his kids, hey, like I want you to be careful? How are you going to blame a husband from telling his wife, like, I'm not sure if you should go there. There's, don't be in public so much because there's a lot of like, hatred going on. Like that is something that naturally, like any loved one wants to protect the people who are dependent upon him.
But there's a difference between situations that could pose a threat to your life versus words.
No,
like
that's true.
I think that society in general respects you more if you are out there with your identity. You're not trying to pick a fight with anyone, but you're just proud in who you are.
Yeah.
And you have enough courage and bravery in you that you don't conceal yourself and your identity, as a result of that fear. At the same time, like I said, if there's a situation where, your physical safety could be in danger, that's I think that would be justifiable.
Yeah, can I maybe propose something? You said like people respect this actually when you're out there. I actually think that it's a very American thing too, that if there's a bully and you're willing to just stand up and say, you can't scare me. Like that is such a beloved thing in American culture, right? And so when Muslims do that, it is respected. It is something that's looked at as like a sign of courage and bravery and something to be commended. I think we should just be willing to do more of that, and maybe we need to be willing to like teach people and instruct people like, hey, you should be, if there's bullies out there and all they're really doing is using words, fear tactics, they can't really hurt you, you should be willing to stand up. It's not a good opportunity for you to just say, what, let me just hide away and make it look like I'm not part of this group.
Yeah. People were like have been canceling trips overseas, and they've been canceling like Umrah and Hajj, trips, the pilgrimage to Saudi Arabia and so forth, in the name of that fear. There's a lot of Islamophobia. I don't want to be harassed at the border, and my response has always been, so what? You get harassed a little bit. This is how you make a point. This is how you make a statement. I am not going to let this type of oppression restrict my movement. and me exercising my rights as an American citizen and exercising my rights as a Muslim and traveling and doing my pilgrimage and visiting, family in the old country and then come back and be subjected, even if that's what it takes, be subjected to, a little restriction at your port of entry, and then you have a story to tell. And we're able to push back. This is how you correct the mechanisms of government, not by hiding. And so, it bothers me a lot when Muslims don't stand up and do the right thing and defend what is theirs.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's fair. I think these are some useful solutions for sure. I think these are things that not everyone will act on, but even if a few people start acting on these things, like I said, it creates friction. The best way to stop an oppressor is by confronting that oppressor and pointing out and exposing that oppression.
I've had someone that was planning to run for Congress in another state and decided not to, because he said, I don't know if my family could handle the pressure and the scrutiny and attacks, and I don't want this for myself or my wife or my kids.
Yeah.
So it just said this person is super qualified. But of course, he did not want to end up, victimized by Zionist groups and Islamophobes and stuff like that. Which really, again, sends me back to Zionism. If this is the source of Islamophobia and that manufactured Muslim hatred in America, fully funded, are we justified, to say that we think that Zionism is really bad for this country and bad for the world? Can we say this without sounding anti-Semitic, without being implicated that we are also hating the Jews?
I think there's so many Jews that recognize this too. I think there's so many Jews that know that this kind of relationship between the United States and the Zionist entity, or this kind of relationship between, lobby groups promoting the Zionist entity and politicians is unhealthy for American society. It's eroding our political system. It's affecting severely our the way we are just around each other. I think everybody agrees. Anyone who's genuinely willing to just observe would agree that this is not okay, right? Even if you say, you know what, I do have a place in my heart for this particular cause or this particular country, but to then say I'm willing to see the demise and decay of my homeland, the United States, for that other cause, that's insane. Who would agree to that?
Especially for immigrants.
Who came and made this place their home.
Exactly. Like where are immigrants supposed to go? If they've scanned the entire world and they figured America is the best place to live, and then this place is crumbling in order to prop up a tyrannical, racist, bigoted regime that is murdering hundreds of thousands of people, where are they supposed to go?
It's so ironic. Like, immigrants are the ones that chose America. They chose the opportunity and the ideals and what this place represents, and those are the people you're going to attack. Like, that's ridiculous. That sounds so counterproductive. That sounds like you don't believe in what America actually stands for.
As opposed to those who just happen to be born here and therefore have no other choice.
Yeah.
If they exacted their dismay and their hatred against America, that's okay because they're American born. But Trump is trying to do away with birthright citizenship, right? So you never know where that's going to go. As opposed to the immigrant who, the minute an immigrant just shows any criticism, to the system that he's trying to defend, that is somewhat is seen as such the most horrific thing. So we can be opposed to Zionism, and we can say that Zionism is the cause of many of the problems in this country today, and we can say that the source of most Islamophobia is funds that are coming from Zionist campaigns without necessarily being anti-Semitic.
Yeah. I might even argue that we should be grateful that we can see Islamophobia because it's now becoming a signal. It's becoming almost like a sign. It's the smoke. And if you follow where the smoke is coming from, you will see a Zionist fire causing damage to this society. And so I would say, wherever we see it, we need to say, okay, let's do something about this to fix it.
Right. What else do we want to talk about?
Everything. Inflation.
There's got to be a couple more points about Islamophobia that we need to cover. Do you have anything else?
I think that was pretty solid. So what is it that, if we're just speaking to the average American Muslim, what is it that the Muslim community can do in order to actually address Islamophobia?
So the solution starts conceptually. I think Muslims in their minds, they need to know, number one, much of the Islamophobia that you've been experiencing as individuals and as a community is manufactured and funded by Zionist groups who want to keep you as a distraction so that they continue to commit their crimes with full impunity, right?
And so that's super useful because psychologically, like that makes you less like worried about that other person that may have said those Islamophobic things or acted based on it. You can still see that this person, I can actually change most of these people's minds.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the other piece of this is that, conceptually speaking, knowing that Islamophobia is manufactured also leads us to other conclusions, which is, I don't really need to spend my entire life trying to educate people and be nice to everyone and always assume I'm a reflection of Islam and I have to always be restrained and I always have to be on my best behavior and always have to be patient because I really need to educate everyone. I think that's a fool's errand. You're human at the end of the day. Those who are open to education, we're going to talk to them. We're going to answer the questions. We're going to invite them to come to the mosques and the facilities, right? But you also need to conceptually understand that some people, either because they are very well paid or because they are super bigoted, there's nothing you can do or say that will fix that, right? Mm-hmm. So you don't need to change everyone, and you don't need to fix everyone. You just need to stand firm and make sure that your actions are legal and your actions are inspired by your own values and open up to society and just move forward. This is really like an important conceptual checkpoint that has to be stated.
Yeah, that's super different, by the way, than like the usual like attitude that we're told to have is like, hey, you need to be on your absolute best behavior at all times, which I know in theory sounds like yes, because even as people of faith, we should just be really good people all the time. But that's what we want. But I think that's different than faking it and manufacturing it and like not just being willing to like authentically be who you are in your own personality and your own behavior, while also still, of course, be a good person. But you don't have to act like an ambassador all the time, walking around with.
Exactly, or an angel. Right. You see Islam through my actions, therefore I need to be an angel all the time. That's neither possible nor realistic. But the other thing also that if we talk about actual steps, the other thing is that you have to understand that you are not fighting for Islam. You're not defending Islam and the Muslim community. You're really fighting for American ideals. Yeah. And you're defending the American Constitution as a citizen. That's your job, that's your responsibility. Democracy has to be protected, otherwise it erodes and dies when citizens are not actively protecting it. And so, if you continue to be threatened and you continue to be intimidated by Islamophobia and the attacks on you every single day, and then you go hide in your cocoon, that's not really helping. Right? You're not espousing the Muslim cause. You're espousing the American cause. America comes first because we're all citizens of this country. Therefore, if you frame your effort and your activism that way, you're able to work with everyone. And so you're going to work with the Asian American community in defending their rights. You work with the black community in defending their rights. And protecting the rights of the Muslim community is part and parcel of protecting America. And this is how you're able to move forward. So, you're not isolated, you're not singled out. An attack on you and your rights becomes an attack on the Constitution.
Yeah, agreed. And just to maybe add to that, I think that's super clear. But that doesn't mean you're compromising your faith, right? You would ask any Christian, and they'll say, yes, my number one priority is God, and my number two priority, if they're a good Christian, is my family, and my third priority is my nation. Right? Why can't a Muslim say the exact
Not
same
only
thing?
that, I actually think that your Islamic values need to be at the very forefront of your operation and your activism.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not going to abandon, my love for God. I'm not going to abandon my modesty.
Yeah.
I'm not going to engage in foul language, because as Muslims we're not supposed to do that, just to make a point.
Right.
I'm not going to engage in gambling and usury and alcohol, just to be like everybody else. And not only that I will protect myself from this degradation, I will preach that.
Yeah, exactly. Because I believe that this will actually make this place better.
Exactly.
And the people who are suffering here, I think that if they took on some of these ideas, they'd be better off too.
And they don't have to become Muslim, by the way,
Sure.
to adopt some of those ideas. We're talking
no
about
problem.
things that will clean your neighborhood, and things that will make sure that your spouse does not commit infidelity, and that your kids don't abandon you in your old age, right? Who could possibly say no to those things? And if anyone is upset because American Muslims are putting their values that are, by the way, very American, at the very forefront of their activism, if that causes Islamophobia, we're okay with that.
Sure.
Yeah, we're sure.
Absolutely.
We're okay with that, right? The other piece, I think, is that Muslims should not hesitate, to run for office. Should not refrain from public engagement. Should not refrain from understanding the local challenges, in their own local community. We're not talking about federal. We have to start local, right? And so you have to understand the issues in your county, issues in your city, the issues in your township, whatever. We don't have townships in California, but the local problems.
Parish.
Exactly, the local parish. The local problems that your community is struggling, including yourself and your family, and you want to engage in those problems by running for office and building institutions, building local businesses, and really being ambitious, in changing your own community and ultimately your own society to the better.
Yeah, I think this is like the way to genuinely engage in politics. Like, who cares, about like some token figure? Okay, this person is Muslim and they were appointed to this position or that position. How about just stuff that's happening around you, the issues in your school, your children's school, and the problems that are causing local businesses not to be able to thrive? Just get involved and try and fix those things. And at some point, those solutions will also, you have to have faith, right? You have to believe that if these are actual good solutions, they'll trickle up. They'll rise up to the top of society, and at a national level, people will start to see and say, hey, you know what? Those ideas could work for America overall. Right? You have to start local.
100%. And one of the things that the American people are noticing now is that pragmatism, I think, is really corrupting our political process. In the sense that we can't really trust any politician anymore. Where they stand or what stance they're adopting, is this because of the money or because of the phone calls or because of the pressure?
Yeah.
Party loyalty. The president is give him a call, yesterday night. And I think people are just, they know that every politician is not genuine. I think what the American voter today is looking for, and maybe, it's not our turn yet as Muslims because, of Islamophobia, but I think once that cloud of Islamophobia is removed, I think the American voter is looking for stubborn people who have values, who have principles, and they are willing to lose elections, and they're not going to change their positions just because the money is coming from this group or the support is coming from that association.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. I'm perfectly willing to lose the elections, but because my values matter to me more than anything.
They're stubborn in how genuine they are. They're genuinely stubborn. I think that's why Massey lost, right? That's why he lost his primary.
The last Republican with some honor in the House. It's insane.
Maybe we'll call it now. He'll run for president. Let's see.
The last thing I think that's important in this conversation is that growth of influence will ultimately cause friction, and that's okay. We have to accept that and not be discouraged and deterred when we get attacked in the process. This is a democracy. Not everyone is going to like what you say. Not everyone is going to like your success. They're going to push back using democratic and undemocratic methods, and mostly undemocratic methods, and we just have to be vigilant and push back.
Okay. Awesome. Let's do it.
Great.